Is 6 o'clock on PST on a Thursday, which means that it is time to continue our delightful exploration of Andy Ngo's horrible book and whether it continues to be horrible. I don't want to spoil anything, but I've read ahead a little bit, and the answer is below. So we are going to be reading about the scourge of free speech warriors on campus and also critical theory. It's going to be super fun. But first, I'm going to pour myself a little bit of whiskey. It is definitely a whiskey evening. I do apologize. I'm a little bit low energy tonight. It's been a hell of a 24 hours, and I am a little bit sad. If anyone has questions about me being a Nazi or collaborating with Andy Ngo, or sympathizing with Nazis or platforming Andy Ngo by insulting him, feel free to throw them in the comments section. I'll be happy to explain all of that. Anyway, great to see everybody. Let's get started. The campus far-left violence and rioting involving students and academics in early 2017 was only the beginning. On the other side of the country, around 200 students at Middlebury College in Vermont shut down a scheduled speaking lecture featuring American Enterprise Institute scholar Charles Murray in March 2017. Well, that seems bad. Does anyone know? Do we know who Charles Murray is? And he's gonna tell us. They accused the political scientist of racism and fascism for his 1994 book, The Bell Curve, which in one chapter compared psychometric disparities across population groups, which is a really interesting way to describe the bell curve, because that book is about disparities between races, and it uses some real suspect science to suggest that certain races are less intelligent than other ones, and it's real shitty. I have linked in the description to a really fantastic video by Sean, the skull guy, about the bell curve. It's about 2 hours long, and he destroys it, sets it on fire, reconstitutes it from the ashes, and then destroys it again. This book is real bad. Yeah, thank you, Ms. Heathen. You are correct. That is exactly what it is, and it's not okay. So yeah, oh, very nice. That doesn't surprise me, Wed Teeler. It seems like a very good book for the PPB to be reading. I'm sure they are familiar with the concept anyway, even though I'm not sure how well they can read. But yeah, so it turns out that students who have read books don't like the bell curve because of the racism. Anyway, but Andy Ngo would term that psychometric disparities across population groups. So that's, I guess one way to put it. An online profile by the Southern Poverty Law Center declaring Murray a white nationalist was also shared among activists to rally them to shut down the event. Unable to speak on stage due to the shouting and chants, Murray was ushered to another room where he spoke to a camera that live-streamed the footage. By that point, students outside the hall were joined by Antifa militants in the parking lot, many dressed in black bloc. Were they outside agitators, or were they students in bloc? We don't know, and there's no way to tell. Alas, the world may never know. Campus security attempted to escort Murray and Alice Stanger, a professor at Middlebury, to a vehicle that was supposed to whisk them away from campus, but they were confronted by violent left-wing militants and Antifa, who prevented them from getting in the car. Stanger said that during the attack she was shoved and had her hair forcefully yanked, leading to a neck injury that required hospitalization. I don't know. I'm not doubting. I'm just saying there's no citation there. That's all I'm saying. Just throwing it out there. We intercepted them between the door and the car and surrounded them with signs and chanting and clapping, said one of the Antifa, interesting, to Politico at the time, and there's a citation for that. That's nice. And really, just letting Charles Murray know that you can't come to this campus and expect to leave without repercussions. Don't be a fucking racist. I don't know. I'm just saying. Once Murray and the professor made it inside the car, Antifa surrounded the vehicle and prevented it from leaving. Security desperately pushed rioters out of the path of the car, but they kept regrouping. I wonder if desperation is the word that you'd use for what they did. I've been to a few protests where security have pushed people, and desperate is never the word I'd use. But maybe they were desperate. Maybe they were desperate to protect the students, and I'm sure that's true. Yeah, no, I agree. I should have CW'd clapping for Wed. I'm sorry. I'm not very good at CWs. Yes. Once the car nearly made it out of the parking lot, one of the Antifa, again with the Antifa, jumped on its hood, and we've got a citation for that. It is G, How the Middlebury Riot Really Went Down. That's an interesting title. Let's see what that's from. And okay, it's Politico. All right. Okay, that's a real journal. Good job. Good job. For once. But yeah, good job, Andy, for citing a real news network and not the Post Millennial or one of your tweets. I'm proud of you. The driver drove down the block with a militant still on top before slamming on the brakes, causing the attacker to fall off. The Antifa promptly took off running before Middlebury police arrived at the scene. As witnessed in other cities, swarming cars and attacking those inside is a riot method of choice for Antifa. There was one incident in Portland where a car that had driven in a most aggressive manner was surrounded by Black Bloc on account of the aggressive manner mostly, and Andy got a video of that. I think it might have even been his video. I'm not sure. It's so rare for him to have a video. I kind of doubt it. But either way, he just shared the part where they mobbed the car, not the part where the car drove aggressively through a crowd. So if Andy Ngo means that anti-fascists and other protesters don't like it when cars menace them, then yeah, I'm going to give him that one. Sure. Let's see here. So yeah, sounds like the college attendees didn't care for a fucking racist talking about eugenics at their college, and I have no notes on any of that. Moving on. Antifa violence on American... Oh, he stole that footage too. Of course he fucking did. Of course he did. I don't know why I thought for a second he actually did work. You know, for somebody who's all about like the far right and work ethic and bootstraps, he sure doesn't do a lot of work. I'm just throwing it out there. Just a lot of grifting for a guy who's into freedom of property and, you know, free enterprise, laissez-faire capitalism. It really makes you think, as the Turning Point gentlemen like to say. Right. Moving on to a different horror of modern academia, or as Andy would say, academe. It's not pretentious at all. Antifa violence on American university campuses continued month after month in 2017. In May, dozens of radical left-wing students at the Evergreen State College in Olympia, Washington, shut down a biology class taught by Professor Brett Weinstein. You probably heard about that one. This was national news. Certainly in my corner of the world, this was big news in 2017. They took issue with his emails expressing concerns over the university's planned day of absence event, where whites were asked to stay away from campus. Protests continued the following day, leading to several hundred rioters barricading doors and windows so that the university president and administrators could not leave. They demanded radical changes in the firing of Weinstein. The following month, the university canceled classes for 2 days following a violent threat that was phoned in. During this time, rioters roamed the campus with sticks and baseball bats, causing $10,000 in property damage. We have a citation. It is, let me look it up real quick. We're going to talk about why all that's wrong in just a second. Let me just look up this citation real quick. Let's see here. Apologies. I do try sometimes to, okay. Wow. You know what? It's Washington Post. Andy, I'm impressed. You actually did some research on this chapter. Unfortunately, you are leaving out a lot of details that are important. If you look in the description, we got an article about it, explaining the context, and it's called The Real Free Speech Story at Evergreen. I'm going to read you a brief excerpt of it just to counterbalance Mr. No here. Many students were irritated and angered by Weinstein's email, which he doesn't mention, by the way. The email is basically like, don't... I should explain the day of absence thing. Let me see if he does that, actually. Let's see here. Yeah, no, he definitely doesn't. So the day of absence thing is... I can read about that. I'm so good at this, just umming and ahhing and not doing the thing I keep saying I'm going to do. The original controversy at Evergreen involved the school's Day of Absence, an official event that had been held for decades. As part of the tradition, faculty and students of color would leave campus to illustrate their importance to the school and community. The next day, they returned on a Day of Presence where there were speakers and programming for the entire school. So this was a well-established tradition, a lot of history there. And then in 2017, they asked for white students to leave instead. In solidarity, and the article explains that a lot of white students were involved in the planning of this, and everyone agreed that this was a pretty cool symbol, especially in this era, the era at the time of Donald Trump, who was banning people from coming over from countries like the one where my dad's from, and deporting people. And I don't remember if the Kids in Cages story had broken yet. I don't think it had, but that was going on at the time, and shit was awful. Shit was real bad, and so they wanted to mix it up, and Weinstein didn't like that. So he emailed that the quote, the change in the day's structure was dangerous and immoral. That's from the article, not his email. He did describe it. This is a quote. The first, basically, leaving voluntarily is a forceful call to consciousness, which is, of course, crippling to the logic of oppression. But there's a huge difference between a group or coalition deciding to voluntarily absence themselves from a shared space and a group or coalition encouraging another group to go away. Many students were irritated and angered by Weinstein's email, but it did not trigger protests nor a call for Weinstein to be fired. In fact, the protests on campus supposedly responding to that email did not take place until May of 2017 and were focused on an entirely different incident, Littleton says. That month, police took 2 black students out of their dorms just before midnight following an altercation in the cafeteria the day before. The non-black students involved in the altercation were not detained. In response to this bullshit, that's my insertion, activists organized protests, which included demonstrations and marches through classroom buildings in order to raise awareness. During this march, Weinstein decided to come out of his classroom and confront the protesters. The protesters were all aware of Weinstein's email, and the conversation grew contentious. Students were especially angered when police arrived. They initially believed that Weinstein had called them himself, since the students were protesting police violence. So basically what I'm saying here is that Andy Ngo has simplified this incident beyond recognition. The baseball bats thing that he claims was based on a clearly posed picture of a bunch of students carrying a variety of things, including baseball bats, outside of a house. It is not an action shot. We do not have any kind of proof that that happened. Andy is full of shit, and we're going to move on. You are correct, Corey. Rimpy Rimpington, thank you for the compliment. I like my glasses too. I'm sorry, Wed. I forgot to CW on the property damage again. I'm sorry. A quick reminder to everybody before we move on with Andy's incredible descriptions of Evergreen incidents, which continue from here. This live stream is, as usual, for Myanmar. I know a lot of you have already donated, and thank you. Like, we've raised a lot of money, but we can, if you have more, or if you want to, or if you want to share it on your social media, there's a link in the description. It's right at the top. And any proceeds from this video will go to that as well. It's better to donate at the link because YouTube will take a cut of any super chats that you give me, and it's all going to them anyway, so you might as well just do a direct. But whichever is easier for you. If you feel like it, you don't have to, but if you feel like it, it's a thing you could do. Moving along, on June 15th, 2017, the Evergreen Anti-Fascist Community Defense Network organized a mass gathering on campus to confront a small rally by Patriot Prayer, the Portland area conservative group. And I'm going to stop there, and we're going to talk about Patriot Prayer on June 15th, 2017. So Patriot Prayer, about 2 weeks before, had a rally in downtown Portland, which was contentious because about 5 days before that, white nationalist Jeremy Christian stabbed 2 people to death and left one other person in critical condition while screaming racistly. And Jeremy Christian had been to Patriot Prayer events. He was escorted out on occasion, but he had also been there. And Patriot Prayer went ahead and had their rally anyway. It featured white nationalists were there, white nationalist adjacent at best speakers were there. Baked Alaska was there, whom you may remember as somebody who is now part of the Groypers, who are definitely white nationalists. There was also Kyle Stickman Chapman, who, if you remember the Proud Boys thing a little while ago, where they were we're splitting off into the Proud Boys, no more non-white people allowed. That was his joke or not joke. Jokes are never just jokes. That's the Patriot Prayer that went to Evergreen 2 weeks after that happened. They went. So that is actually a pretty threatening thing because of the because of the thing that had just happened, and conservative group is a hell of a euphemism. And Holly, thank you for your compliment. I appreciate it very much. I thank you. Yeah, so that's why they were pissed, and we're going to move on with that in mind. Violent skirmishes initiated by Antifa militants in the Red Square led to Patriot Prayer leader Joey Gibson being left bloodied in the face. Jesus, that's an awkward word, use of the word being. I feel like there should be a citation for that. There isn't. This is what Patriot Prayer does. I wrote a whole thesis on it while I was ostensibly a Nazi. Sorry, I'm not bitter at all about these last 24 hours and being fast-jacketed for... It's fine. Anyway, my point is that in my thesis, what I mostly explore is how Patriot Prayer creates exactly this kind of propaganda, where they will do something provocative, like, I don't know, inviting white nationalists to talk at their fucking rallies. And then 2 weeks later, they'll go to a campus, and then they'll be very peaceful. They'll just want to talk. We love Martin Luther King. We love free speech. That's all. We're just free speech activists. But it's like a child's version of the world where, like, if I close my eyes, you can't see me. It's that. Like, they're definitely provoking people, but not in a way that's immediately obvious if you don't know the history of the group. And this is what they do every single time. And they're there to get these videos. They're there to get the videos of the Antifa militants, as Andy calls them, provoking violence when actually they're responding to provocation that's been lasting weeks or months before. So with that in mind, yeah, I gotta wonder, like, does he just ignore a word? Is he just like, no, you can't tell me how to write. I'll use being as awkwardly as I want. Fuck you. Oh my God. I've played in this campaign. You're so fucking right. It's incredible. All right. Continuing on. This is correct. Where were we? I apologize. I got distracted by how bad Patriot Prayer is. Law enforcement were there in large numbers, but responded only after violence reached a high threshold. Which, I'd like to know what a high threshold is. I mean, this is Mr. Milkshake, so maybe it's not that high, but, I don't think anyone, like, died or was even seriously injured, so a high threshold, that seems a bit much to me, but what do I know? I have never published a book, so maybe Andy is the expert here. I don't know. Take that out of context, please. There were over 100 left-wing protesters, many of them in black bloc and ready for battle. They held signs that read, "Black Lives Matter," and "America was never great." Jesus. That's terrible. Yeah, we actually don't know if buildings were harmed. I think everything's okay, actually. That's probably why the police didn't interfere, is because there were no buildings harmed in this particular incident, not a single window broken. So yeah, no, it's rest easy, Wed. We're not there yet. Just violent signs for now. Black Lives Matter in America was never great. Noted free speech advocate Andy Ngo talking about how those signs are bad. After being separated from the other side by police who had set up metal barriers, they used whatever they could gather to hurl as projectiles. I mean, probably. I'm just saying a citation might be nice there. Although most protesters at the event were politically polarized, a dozen people observed from the sideline. Alex Pearson, a junior at Evergreen State at the time, told me he supported racial justice but didn't agree with all of the militant tactics. Excuse me. If you're not to the level of where they are, you have the risk of being put with complete opposite people, he told me, and there's a citation, and I believe he said that. On the day of absence, Pearson, who is white, said he accidentally attended class, a mistake his peers made sure he knew. All right, a couple things on this. I got some opinions. One is that I don't really see how a day that was very contentious in the lead up, where there was a lot of controversy about it, where Weinstein wrote that email. I don't think accidentally is probably accurate, and I think it's a little bit weak not to own your shit. I'm going to go out on a limb here. I actually don't entirely agree with the sentence that he spoke about if you're not to the level of where they are, you have the risk of being put with the complete opposite people. The left has a tendency to flatten everyone to the right of them into Nazi, and it's not good. I'm not even saying it's unfair. I'm saying it's bad. It's dangerous to do that. It's real bad to pretend that every single person on the right is the same, because then you're going to treat them the same, and that isn't usually the right way to do it. Like, you treat Nick Fuentes a lot different than you treat Mitt Romney. I'm not saying you're going to invite either of them to have a beer with you, but I do think that there are differences. This concludes my TED Talk. Coriolia is correct, and we are going to keep reading. Also interesting that he only interviews this person who agrees with him and never at any point interviews anyone else. In 2017, I was unknown to most people as a no-name student journalist. Oh, if only we could go back to then. The anonymity allowed me to more easily ask Antifa militants for interviews. All declined that day, except for one young woman. Okay, you know what, Andy? Good job. You proved me wrong. You asked for interviews according to you, and one young woman talked to you. Let's hear what she said. People frame Antifa very poorly and call them terrorists, she said. Theoretically, I haven't heard of Antifa beating up any minorities ever. That isn't, that seems good. Also accurate, seems accurate. I mean, I guess Andy Ngo is a minority. He's Asian and gay, but I don't think that's why they beat him up. I think he got messed up because he was doxing people. I think that might be why, not because of the other stuff. I think that would be Andy's friends who do that sort of thing. But what do I know? Anyway, let's carry on and learn more about this horrible event. After the rally, several of the right-wingers' cars were found vandalized. The tires were completely slashed. I didn't witness who committed the vandalism, but earlier in the day, I observed a group of masked people monitoring cars as drivers pulled into the campus parking lot. Some of the masked people took photos of the vehicle license plates. This information, I would later learn, is used in Antifa-compiled dossiers on their opponents. Known as doxing, they release addresses, car details, and employment information to the public so that their victims can be hounded en masse. I love that Andy's talking about doxing in a negative way, given that that's all he does anymore. I love that for him. I love that for all of us. Here we are, with Andy doing that shit. The campus violence and far-left radicalism continued through 2017 and into 2020. Each year appeared to show students' willingness to be more extreme than the previous one. On Halloween 2020, around 150 students from Northwestern Union joined forces with outside agitators to riot in Evanston, Illinois, at an anti-police protest. So we got a citation. It is to a local news channel. Good job, Andy. I believe that, they smashed windows, threw bricks, and hurled explosive mortar fireworks, as opposed to the unexplosive mortar fireworks, which is very different. At Evanston police officers. They also used high-powered lasers to blind police. Really, they were blinded. I've never seen any evidence of the police officer being blinded by a laser. I don't expect to, but, by all means, prove me wrong. I am so sorry, Wed. Jesus, yeah, no, there were windows broken there. I'm sorry. I'll try to CW next time. Northwestern University is one of the world's most prestigious private research institutions, and yet a faction of its student body organized and behaved exactly as the Antifa who riot in Portland and other cities. How did American institutions of higher learning become breeding grounds for far-left violent extremism? Has anyone ever told Andy about the 60s? Also, thank you for the super chat, Michael Metaluni. I appreciate the hell out of you. Thank you. That will go to Myanmar, as will any of your donations, or there's a link in the description. It's true, Wed, and someone's got to put a stop to it. We're developing sharks. It's a Sharknado with frickin' laser beams. I'm mixing references, but it's fine, right? Oh yeah. I think that might be it. Crippled by it, I hear. Yeah, that was fun too. Yeah, the soccer players that make up the police force, they're happy to beat people with truncheons and say it's fine, but God forbid they trip or, get bumped by something. Anyway, let's find out how American institutions of higher learning became breeding grounds for far-left violent extremism in 2017 and never before, certainly not in the 60s. We got there! Oh my god, it's finally time. It's finally time to talk about critical theory. Okay. The title of the section is Critical Theory, and we're going to read it now. This is amazing. Antifa do not view their premeditated and preemptive acts of violence as violence. It is part of the strategy of remaking words to have completely new meanings, but it also pulls from a left-wing philosophical tradition established by 20th century German philosopher and sociologist Herbert Marcuse. Marcuse is one of the most important philosophers and social theorists of the modern left. His theories and ideas form the ideological pillars for many so-called social justice and Antifa movements today, even without its adherents realizing so. We're going to keep, somebody just asked what's critical theory. Brandon, we're going to get there. I promise. We're going to talk about critical theory a whole lot in a second. We're going to keep reading Andy's version before I totally pick it apart, because he does go on. So everyone strap in. Born in Berlin in 1898, Marcuse was a committed leftist all his life. As a young adult, he studied the writings of Karl Marx and voted for the German Communist Party. Citation. There's a citation that somebody was a communist in the early 1900s. I'm shocked. Okay. In 1933, he joined the Institute for Social Research, a think tank at Frankfurt University. Oh, that's right. It was more commonly known as the Frankfurt School. We're getting into it now. Ladies, gentlemen, and those who lieth betwixt, we're going to do the Frankfurt School. With the rise of fascism in Europe, many of the intellectuals at the Frankfurt School escaped to the United States, where they became faculty and influential thinkers. Super weird how fascists didn't like them. Let's hear why you don't like them, Andy. Columbia University in New York City took in a number of Frankfurt academics. One of the Frankfurt School's lasting legacy is the development of critical theory, the Marxist-inspired theory that undergirds all the various studies discipline in academe. Again, Andy, you're from fucking Portland. It's academia. Stop with the academ shit. Like, it's very cute, but come on. It's just so cringe. In short, critical theorists develop ways to criticize perceived structures and systems of oppression in order to bring about radical change. That sounds pretty neat, actually, Andy. We're gonna get to it. That's the one sentence in here that's probably somewhat correct. Like, yeah, it criticizes perceived structures and symptoms of oppression that in order to bring about radical change, and that's good, actually. It offers a heuristic. I think that's how you pronounce that word. I'm mostly a reader. I'm not a talker. Heuristic for understanding all human interactions through power dynamics between groups. When applied to race, concepts like white privilege, whiteness, and intersectionality purport to explain why there are disparities in outcomes among racial groups. And we're going to stop there. And I will point you to, there is a link in the description to an extremely dense article on critical theory. I'm not going to lie to you, I didn't read all of it. But the one point that I will make is that if you look at the article, Marcuse is barely mentioned. In fact, the person most associated with critical theory, if anybody, would probably be Horkheimer and a variety of other philosophers. Marcuse is one of many. Marxist inspired is another way to say that there's a Marxist school of thought in academia, and this is part of that tradition. And so, yeah, but like, I mean, I guess he wouldn't care, right? He wouldn't care that Marxism has had a pretty big impact, and he would just think that's bad, right? But like, it's not... The way he's using it implies that it's like a secret communist plot, and it isn't. Like, Marxism is just a school of thought, and a lot of things have come out of that way of viewing the world. It's like a materialist perspective, viewing the world as class struggle, viewing the world as, I mean, just a struggle. You can apply it to like a lot of different things, a struggle between different groups with radically different power dynamics, all that shit. Like, I'm just saying that it doesn't mean that it's like the Communist Manifesto rewritten in it. That's kind of what he's implying here. So yeah, he's right. Critical theory is a thing. It's a lot more complicated than he's describing it as. His definition of it being critical is not terrible. I will read you very quickly a brief bit of this very dense article, just a few sentences. It follows from Horkheimer's definition that a critical theory is accurate only if it meets 3 criteria. It must be explanatory, practical, and normative all at the same time. That is, it must explain what is wrong with current social reality, identify the actors to change it, and provide both clear norms for criticism and achievable practical goals for social transformation. So what this does is it removes academia from the kind of like Enlightenment and modern position that academia and academic studies were neutral. They were just observers of the world, just describing. And it says, no, like, what we have a responsibility not just to observe what's happening, but to observe what's happening and in a way that's more judgy, more normative, like more exploring whether it's right or wrong. Like, we're not going to describe what is and say, well, I guess that's just how things are. You know, I guess that European culture is dominant, and that we don't have to look into that any further. We'll just go with it, and then, you know, ask why, and you know what I mean. Critical theory takes the opinion that we should ask, you know, why is European society dominant? Is that a good thing? Like, what are the outcomes for marginalized groups? Like, it's actually pretty neat. And Andy is, but Andy hates it. A lot of people hate it. So I hope that's helpful. I'm not a critical theory expert, but it's the best I could do. Wow, you are some kind of masochist, Bo Fletcher Youngblood, but I'm super glad you're here, and I'm glad you're having fun. I'm having fun too. So now we're going to get to my favorite sentence in this chapter so far. Everyone get ready for this one. Get your drinks out. Colloquially, critical theory is sometimes referred to as cultural Marxism, an application of Marxist theory to groups of people based on identity rather than class. So, critical theory is known as cultural Marxism colloquially in very specific corners of the world. And by that I mean the right, and mostly the far right. And it serves the same purpose as a thing called cultural Bolshevism, which was a response to the same kind of stuff in the 30s by the Nazis. And if you look up cultural Bolshevism, you'll find some very troubling posters with some very disgusting racial caricatures of jazz musicians and other such things. The idea of cultural Bolshevism and of cultural Marxism as well is that degenerate culture is coming in and destroying the pure culture, whether you call that Western chauvinism or Aryan or whatever you want to use. The idea is that it's muddying the waters, so to speak. So this is a pretty big dog whistle, and it really indicates who Andy's audience is, because to them, he's correct. Colloquially, to the people who are reading this book that are his target audience, that is exactly how it's known. And also, I would actually take issue with the whole idea that critical theory and their concept of cultural Marxism are the same. Critical theory is a very broad thing that encompasses many disciplines. Cultural Marxism is some bullshit that encompasses some real sus shit. So, in conclusion, everything I disagree with is Marxism. Absolutely nailed it. Yes, he is. I don't know how he thinks that's going to work out for him. I don't want the fascists to win. I hope they don't, and I'll do whatever I can to stop it. However, if they do, the one silver lining to me will be to watch people like Andy Ngo and Candace Owens wake up to the fucking monsters that they've woken up. And I swear to God, I will go into the gas chambers singing if I can watch the look on their faces when they realize these were never their friends. It's just how I feel. I think that's true. I agree. And Wed's spilling the tea. I absolutely believe the cops talk about cultural Marxism at all times. Many dogmas of critical theory have become so mainstream in American academe and society that people don't even know the origins of those truth claims. Yes, I read that correctly. Those truth claims. What the golden retriever that edited your book has failed you yet again. Have you heard it argued, Andy continues, that there is no such thing as objective reality and truth? Social justice ideologues use this dogma to deconstruct science, e.g. biological sex, for example. Okay, first of all, you don't need e.g. an example. I understand that is the least of the problems with what you just said. But pick one, Andy. This is elementary shit. Corey, great question. Second, I really should. I believe that you could. I believe everyone could. I believe that, this is atrocious. And, Corey, if I don't address that, remind me after I'm done ranting about what the fuck he just said. So the argument isn't that there's no such thing as objective reality and truth. The argument is that a lot of what we think is objective reality and truth is just constructs, like shit we've been taught. Like racism. Race, I should say. Like, the concept of race isn't real. Like, there is no basis in, like, objective reality for the concept of race. There are people with different skin tones. That's a fact. But, like, the concept of them being, like, fundamentally different, that's some shit we made up. Now, it's shit we have to live with. Like, it's real in the sense that it permeates our society and we're all affected by it. And unfortunately, we seem to be saddled with it. We've all grown up with it. We've all absorbed racial ways of thinking and racist ways of thinking. If you grew up in this world, you have observed some, I guarantee it. So that's what they mean. They don't mean that, like, truth is an illusion and, like, we're all hallucinating everything and you can't know if the table is real or, like, if the window is real and if you jump off a cliff, maybe you won't die. Like, probably there are some philosophy students in Ivy League universities smoking way too much pot and talking about that shit, but that's not what critical theory is at all. So, also, deconstructing the science around biological sex is, like, a nonsense phrase. Like, he's obviously being hella transphobic here. And I just, again, this is really flattening and misinterpreting the issue of transness. I'm not really, I'm not trans. I'm not equipped to talk about it in depth, but I guess that's never stopped me. I just think it's like, this is elementary shit. Like, trans people know that chromosomes are real. That's not the thing. Gender is also a social construct. Like, why do women and men have different roles? Why are there only women and men? Why did we do that? Intersex people exist, but, like, we've just decided that there's just two and that they're very rigid and that women are one way and men are the other. And, like, that's made up bullshit. Chromosomes aren't made up. Like, those are real. Chromosomes are real. But, like, the things that we ascribe to chromosomes are some bullshit. Thank you, critical theory, for helping with that. Andy, you're wrong. Corey Elliott has asked about, and this is a big old content warning for just a bunch of shit. This whole video really is that. Hopefully you've gotten that impression by now, and if you're bothered by it, I hope you aren't here, because oh boy. No's latest post about the massage parlor shooting being what about the whites? Oh shit, Corey, I read the first part of this and I thought it was about the massage parlor shootings being about killing sex workers, which was fine for him. I hadn't heard about this. You should tell me about it. Oh my god, you should tell me about it right now. While you wait, Space Jesus has a good point. Yeah, perfect, thank you. Chromosomes don't determine sex. They don't, they're a fact of biology, but, like, they don't have the importance that we ascribe them. Like, they just don't. Like, they don't. So, in my opinion, which is correct. Yes, Aubrey thumbs it up well. Yeah, okay, so Corey, when you, if you can tell me what it is, or I'll just look later and cry. It is a little sad to me that, like, I mean, Andy is an Asian man, and to be able to, like, to be so unhappy and so brainwashed that you, like, look at a shooting that targeted, I mean, any ethnic group, right? But, like, especially one that you belong to, and be like, this is fine, I see no danger signs here, I'll be fine. Like, it's, oh shit, I didn't even notice! Squealy strands of D&D. I'm gonna run a chromosome-based game. I don't know how, but I'm working on it. Oh, we got a screenshot coming. Let's see here. Sorry about this. I'm very professional. I don't know if you knew that. All right, I'll check back in a second. So we're gonna keep reading more of Andy Ngo's nonsense. So again, he's just been transphobic, and then he continues. That's from critical theory, and there's a citation. Oh boy, what's the citation to? Let's find out. 245. Theodore W. Adorno, Negative Dialectic. I feel like I should know who Adorno is, and I'm embarrassed that I don't. Adorno, this is... Okay, yeah, so he's a... Interesting, so he appears, and I am really just showing my whole ignorance here. Like, I got a whole ass degree, and I still don't know anything. It's very embarrassing. He's another philosopher in the general milieu that Andy is discussing, and maybe he said all those things. I don't know. I don't care. It's pretty disingenuous to cite a single philosopher and then claim that he speaks for an entire body of theory that has in fact influenced so much stuff. Interesting point. A lot of weak arguments on the right seem to want to leverage the urgency and seriousness of such events to lead their utter nonsense. And yeah, you know what? That's... Yeah. No, it's like the never let a good crisis go to waste, right? Let's see here. Oh, goodness, Wed. I'm sorry. No. It's okay. It's just a... Corey would never shoot a screen. He's a gentleman. And a scholar as well. All right. What about words or violence? Antifa militants cite this to justify their violent behavior against opposing views. This is also from critical theory. The idea that words matter is from critical theory, that they matter a lot, actually, and it's interesting that like the idea that the words we use influence how we think is an interesting argument, and it seems like a pretty good one. Like, for example, hello haters, you're gonna love this. You're gonna love this. I grew up in the 90s, a time period when "that's gay" was a thing that a lot of people said. It was a perfectly acceptable thing to say. At the time, everyone thought it was fine. And then some people came along and were like, it's not fine actually, because even if you yourself don't think of yourself as homophobic, saying that something is gay as an insult is telling your brain every time you say it that being gay is bad. And so you shouldn't say it. And so I had to do what most people who grew up when I grew up had to do, which is unlearn saying that phrase, and it took a while and it slips out, you know what I mean? But like, that's the words are violence thing distilled into a form that I think is pretty non-controversial. Now, some people really do believe that like literal words are literal violence, and I think that's very silly. I think that words inspire violence, and that some words are very dangerous, and that it's probably good to not, like, I don't know, platform the bell curve guy, for example. But again, he's just simplifying everything down. I take myself far too seriously. You don't take yourself seriously enough. How about that? Wed Teeler nailing it. Words are literal violence, but only when it's graffiti that washes off. Thank you. Let's see what we got here. Oh, we got multiple screenshots. Oh boy. Everyone take a break for a second while I look at this shit. You know what? Let's look together. It'll be so fun. It'll be so fun. We'll all enjoy it together. Andy knows bullshit. Content warning, obviously. Again, the whole last thread, the whole stream thread, I spent too much time on Twitter, is a content warning, so hopefully that's okay. All right, we are gonna look at these together. So, do the other two murdered victims not matter because they weren't Asian? Because 6 Asian women, but then it says 8 people were shot dead in the headline, so they do talk about the other 2 people, just that it's being highlighted that Asian women were the targets. What evidence is there so far that the shootings and murder were motivated by white supremacy? Is the rationale that because the suspect is white, this is white supremacist violence? Do you want this logic applied to Muslims and other groups of people? Oh boy, I think the thing where he like screamed that he wanted to kill all Asians might have been a subtle clue, Andy. Maybe. I feel like possibly. And like, I mean, that's what's been reported. Now, if that's proven to not be the case, then like we'll all reconsider. But it makes sense to report that this might have been a fucking hate crime when somebody screams something like that. Like, was he just screaming random words? I don't know. Looking into the massage parlors that were shot up in the Atlanta area, the shooter suspect told investigators he targeted the business because of a sex addiction. Politicians and media around the world are reporting this as murderous anti-Asian hate inspired by Trump. I have not seen anyone say this was inspired by Trump. Actually, no, that's not true. I have seen people say that the China virus thing might have contributed to the enormous rise in anti-Asian hate crimes in this country, which seems accurate and like a pretty decent description of a real thing that's happening. Seems bad to me. I'm also going to bring up something that my friend pointed out to me, one of my very closest friends, who is a sex worker, by which I mean a human being, who with thoughts and feelings, and one of my favorite people on the planet, who is incredibly upset at this idea. Like there's an underlying thing here where it's like, oh, but it's understandable because he was mad at sex workers, and it's like okay to kill them, right? Like it's like how in America, if there's a movie where a woman gets killed, it's probably a drama or a tragedy. But if there's a movie where like a sex worker gets killed, like it could be a comedy. Like that could just be funny. It could be the premise for a comedy, like trying to get rid of the body of some sex worker who got murdered. You know what I mean? Like dead hooker jokes are everywhere. So like this shit. Like, it's both, right? It's both things. It's horophobia and it's xenophobia, and it's both. And Andy's being disgusting. So let's continue. Atlanta Mayor Keisha Bottom said the city would not participate in victim blaming or shaming, even though the spas may be a front for prostitution service involving migrants. These are literally operating businesses that have not been on our radar. Fuck you. Fuck you. Fuck you, Andy. Fuck you. Again with this shit. Like, this is the most blatant example in this whole ass thread. Like, cool. I hope they were doing prostitution. That's fine to do. It's fine to be a prostitute. Good for them. Like, make your money. You know what? You come over to this country, you make your money. Good job. Sex work is work. Fuck you. Don't kill prostitutes. Don't kill anyone. How about that? This concludes my second TED Talk. Regular TED Talk. All right. Got any? Yeah, I know it totally is. It's just, yeah, it's great. Intersectionalism can be real bad sometimes, it turns out. Yeah, let's see. I'm just looking at the comments. Some of them are all of them are very good. Most, if not all, are very good. Yes, thank you. Agreed. Possibly the oldest profession on earth, and that's fine. And to anyone commenting that it's illegal, a lot of things are illegal that should be legal. Laws are social construct. Critical theory tells us we don't have to accept them as like good. They're bad. Decriminalize sex work. Rip the system. All right, we're going to keep talking about Marcuse for some reason, even though he's not. Yeah, anyway, Marcuse became known as the father of the New Left for his ideological influence on left-wing student protest movements in the 1960s and 70s, particularly through establishing the now far-left foundational belief that tolerance means actually suppressing intolerant, usually right-wing ideas. It's nice that Andy acknowledges that far-left activism has existed before 2017. I'm very proud of him. We've got a recommendation. I can't vouch for this, but check it out. I don't know you, Kieran, but like, check it out. I'll check it out. Yeah, so good on him. Tolerance means actively suppressing intolerant, usually right-wing ideas. I think, Andy, that anyone who has read anything about Nazi Germany would understand why that might be compelling to people. Like, the idea that everyone that isn't like you should be exterminated is not a tolerant idea, and tolerating that idea is not tolerance either, because if you tolerate that viewpoint, people are going to die. That seems bad to me. Oh, it's on sex work. Faber is great on sex work. Excellent. Very cool. Yeah, awesome. Everyone should check it out then, because we got to fix that shit real quick. I mean, we don't have to, but we fucking should. In 1965, Marcuse co-authored a book with sociologist Robert Paul Wolff and philosopher Barrington Moore Jr. titled A Critique of Pure Tolerance. This is why he's tolerant. Okay, this is why. This explains everything. This is why he has to focus on Marcuse, because Marcuse comes the closest to proving his point about the intolerant left, and therefore he must be the guy who's responsible for cultural Marxism, quote unquote. So it's all coming together. Marcuse's essay in the book, Repressive Tolerance, laid the foundation for redefining tolerance to mean militant intolerance towards, quote, prevailing policies, attitudes, opinions, unquote, and the extension of tolerance to policies, attitudes, and opinions which are outlawed or suppressed. In other words, we should not allow perceived intolerant ideas of the space to be expressed, and should be more accepting of extreme beliefs on the left. All right, this is silly, but let's engage in a thought experiment. Let's say that it's banned to consider, Eve's 6 Twitter account to be funny. That's not allowed. You're not allowed to say that. You're only allowed to say that Brooklyn Dad Defiant is funny. I need to get offline. I need to read a book. I need to go into the woods of Ireland. Anyway, let's go with the fucking metaphor. But it's forbidden to say that Eve 6 is funny. So by this logic, then we need to platform Eve 6 and deplatform Brooklyn Dad, which is the correct decision. But once we do that, and then Brooklyn Dad Defiant isn't allowed to be around it, so we have to reverse it. And so we're stuck in a paradox for the rest of time where we're only platforming ideas that aren't allowed, and then as soon as they're allowed, they have to be disallowed again. And I have not read Marcuse's argument, but I would bet you a lot of money it's more complicated than that bullshit, because that seems silly. Moving along. He never says anything about the left in those quotes. Like, Andy Ngo quotes him and then says that it's definitely leftist extreme ideas that need to be platformed. Also, he never links to the piece he's talking about, so we'll never really know. Yeah, you're correct, Miss Heathen. 100%. Yeah, comes from cultural Bolshevism, is bullshit, is anti-Semitic, is a dog whistle. Anytime you hear it, you should be very, very suspicious of that. I have not heard of pananarchy at all. Please go on. While you go on, I'm going to go on too. For decades, American academe has been marinating in Marcuse's ideas, spreading it to students who then form the next generation of politicians, leaders, and activists. And I would just like to say that I went to a very, very liberal liberal, like small liberal arts college, like the one of the quintessential ones. It was Reed. We don't have to talk about it. But I never heard of Marcuse, and that could be because I'm a bad student, or it could be because Marcuse isn't the thing that people talk about in 24/7 in colleges, and Andy Ngo has no idea, despite going to a college himself ostensibly and getting a degree ostensibly. Like, did you go to class, Andy, ever? Did you listen to anything you were taught? I don't know. We'll never know. This feels like, yeah, it really does. Just destroyed. Somebody's asked if I'm a trustafarian. I fucking wish. If someone wants to give me a trust fund, I would really like that. I like money so much. I'm such a terrible socialist because I like to eat and pay my bills. Scandalous. Andy did ace grifting 101. That is true. That's the only class he really paid attention in. And you know what? It served him well. Let's see here. Panarchy. You know, we're going to have to... Okay, here we go. Encompass other, the Oxford English Dictionary lists the noun as chiefly poetic while meaning a universal realm, citing an 1848 institution by Philip James Bartley, the stare panarchy of space. So it's like a universal kind of like... Interesting. That's fascinating. Yeah, I'm going to have to look into that. I've never heard of it, but I'm very interested. Oh, Wed, I'm sorry you had to find out this way. Yeah, I know, it's shocking. You're probably going to have to take some time out to process that. Even stalwart civil liberty organizations like the ACLU, now filled with members educated in this worldview, have been retreating quietly from principle of defending free speech. In a 2018 document sent to members titled ACLU Case Selection Guidelines, Conflicts Between Competing Values or Priorities, terrible title, ACLU, what are you thinking? Jesus. The organization responded to the onslaught of resignations and criticism it received, while after defending the right of the alt-right to march in Charlottesville. God, that is an awkward sentence. Yeah, I should hope that they did respond to the onslaught of resignations and criticism it received after defending the right of the alt-right to march in Charlottesville, because that turned out to be a really good case example of exactly what I was literally just talking about with the paradox of tolerance. Let's keep reading. In August 2017, the ACLU supported Unite the Right organizer Jason Kessler in his lawsuit against the city when it forced him to relocate his permitted rally. However, the 2018 guidelines in response to left-wing criticism stated that, quote, a decision by the ACLU to represent a white supremacist group may directly further an agenda that is antithetical to our mission and values and that may inflict harm on listeners. Yeah. No notes. I don't know if Andy remembers. I feel like he should because his friends were all there. That Charlottesville resulted in a woman getting hit by a car. Like, Andy's real focused on people surrounding cars and a lot less focused on the fact that a lot of people have died at the hands of cars, including Heather Heyer in Charlottesville. That rally featured a bunch of Nazis. Like, I don't mean, like, the casual use of Nazi that we're used to. I mean the ones where they're, like, carrying swastika flags and shit. Like, chanting Jews will not replace us. Remember that, Andy? Remember when they held their tiki churches and chanted shit that hasn't been heard in the streets of American cities for a really long time. Not long enough, but long enough for me to be nostalgic about it. Literal fucking Nazis. So yeah, the ACLU declined to defend the right of people that come in and do the violent rallies and then kill people. And I think that might have been a good call. Like, it might have been a wake-up call that, like, defending all ideas, even the ones that advocate, you know, like murder and shit, is actually is bad. Like, free speech doesn't encompass your right to urge people to kill other people. Like, that's not... No one has ever understood it to be that. Lethal mobile living rooms. I'm not saying I won't. Lethal mobile living rooms. Yes, I quite agree. Quite agree. Oh, we've got a troll. Hello. Welcome, Acidian. Acidian in the chat is just pointing out that the Democrats are the party of slavery, KKK, etc. I'm going to address this, by which Twitter would like to call this platforming. I'm going to platform this opinion by refuting it completely. You are correct. The Democrats were the party of the KKK. And they were the party of a lot of racism. They were the party that opposed desegregation. Wow, what am I trying to say? Emancipation. I apologize. That was a slip of the tongue. That's not true. We're about to get to that because in the 1950s and 60s there was a shift where various factions reshuffled within the Democratic and the Republican Party. And the Democrats went pretty hard for civil rights in an attempt to court the black vote. And the Republicans looked at the field of potential voters and decided that they could probably get the Dixiecrats, which is the Southern Democrats who were loyal to the Democratic Party for all the wonderful reason that you just listed, a city, and put them and court them and make them into the Republican voting base. And that's exactly what happened. If you look up the Southern strategy, you can learn more about it. It was very on purpose. And what I'm trying to say, the city, is that the Democratic Party of today is very different from the Democratic Party of 1860 or even 1960, for that matter. And it's very disingenuous to claim anything else. It would be a little bit like saying the Italians are Romans. The Italians are not Rome. They have a city called Rome, but they're not the Roman Empire, because sometimes in history, shit changes a city, and hope that helped. Yeah, you know what? Give the man his due. I assumed your gender. Give the human being their due. A Citian did do a good job not putting Patriot in their name. Good job. Yeah, no, you can tell. That's how you know someone's a real patriot, is putting the silliest goddamn bird in there. Why the fuck is it a bald eagle? I want to know. It's bullshit. Like, it's a terrible bird. Sorry, I mean, they're pretty, I guess. I'm just saying, I really think the turkey would have been better. The turkey's a badass. Like, they're smart and crafty, and they run through the forest, you know. Pigeons are cool. I like pigeons a lot. This is for sure the content you tuned into, my bird facts. We'll continue reading, shall we? Let's see, where were we? Yeah, okay, right. We were reading about the ACLU. The mainstream left's retreat from liberal values of free speech has worked to the benefit of Antifa in every way imaginable. Yes, the liberals are infamously helping Antifa at all opportunities. Now, not only are large factions of the left sympathetic to Antifa violence, some are actively working to suppress their opponents through getting corporate businesses and big tech to ban them. Oh, so they're using the freedom and private enterprise system that you like to get shit done, Andy? Is that what they're doing? They're encouraging people to use their freedom to spend their money however they want, to not spend their money on fucking fascists? Is that your anger? Somebody says pigeons are tasty. You know what? I believe it. I like them so much. I mean, look, I'd eat one. I'll eat anything almost, except for like a dog or a cat, because I'm sentimental like that. Not saying that it's wrong. I'm just saying I wouldn't. I'd eat a pigeon, but you know, they're also real neat. Like, I like how they strut around and they're not afraid of anything. Turkeys, pecking cars in Massachusetts. I am 100%. This is a 100% pro pecking cars in Massachusetts channel as of now. Let's see here. Just looking at stuff. Corvids are cool. Honestly, corvids are cool as fuck. Crows are incredible. They're beautiful. Ravens are gorgeous. They're so smart. They use tools. Big ups. Somebody has called for me to go vegan. I'm not gonna. I really like meat, and I think there are ethical ways to eat it. I'm not always good at using them, but I like being a predator. I'm kind of proud of it. I don't know. Like, I think it's neat. I don't know. It's probably wrong, but it is how I feel. Indisputably correct. I dare anyone to dispute it. Get out. Oh my god. All right. This is now bird chat. Where I should have brought my Project Veritas cap with the dead bird on it, the dead Twitter bird. I'll bring it next stream. So where are we? Right, okay. We've just learned that big tech is banning the bold stalwart thinkers of the far right. One small sample analysis of public figures banned or suspended on Twitter from 2005 to 2019, published on Quillette, a very reputable source, and you know it because they hired Andy Ngo. Oh my god. Oh shit, you're right. What was I thinking? Oh no. Oh, I'm canceled. Oh, I'm so canceled. Fuck. I might as well delete my account now. No, you know, it's true. No, we gotta fix the meat. Like, we don't eat meat well. We do a real bad job of eating meat, but I'm not against eating meat. Like, I think that indigenous cultures had a much better handle on it. I've got a lot of friends that I really respect who raise and you know, butcher their own meat. I've got two very good friends that do that. I don't, because I live in a studio apartment, but I think it's a really cool way to do it. Like, I think that there are ethical ways to eat meat, and I'm not always good at it. I don't really have the funds to be as good at it as I'd like to be, and I'll also the discipline. Like, it's a personal failing, but I do think there are ethical ways to eat meat. So, Wed bringing the hard truth about pigeons here. So yeah, okay, so Quillette, again, Andy Ngo's old employer, who even for them, Andy went too far at one point. But they've said that with only one exception, all the public figures banned or suspended on Twitter from 2005 to 2019 were right-wing. There is a citation, but you know what? I'm going to hold up the sign anyway because I don't trust Quillette for shit. A small sample that included only right-wing people. It sounds like there might have been a sampling bias there. I don't know. I wasn't there, but like I'm just curious. Yeah, this is exactly accurate, and it's hard. It's hard to do. But hell yeah, your neighbors, fucking kill it. Let's see here. There is really good meat substitutes. I actually used to be a chef in a vegan kitchen. Not a chef. I was a cook. I was a line cook in a vegan kitchen who did like the recipes that were in the book. I was not a gourmet chef, but a lot of them are really good, and it really changed my mind about the feasibility of vegetarianism. Before I moved to Portland, I actually was like not convinced that veganism was even a thing. Like I figured maybe like a couple people did it. But like I was pretty sure that no one was actually vegan because of where I came from. Like grew up in Colorado Springs and then was in the army for 5 years. And then I moved here. I'm like, oh Jesus, like vegans exist and their food's delicious. Like did not know that. Anyway. Oh shit. Let's see here. Ooh. That is tough, Wed. We're gonna have to debate it. Shaved Ice, you should message me about that. I'd like to know more about that. I don't have a chest freezer, which is a problem for this. But it really is. It's a challenge living in a shoebox. You don't have a lot of options. I mean, I love my shoebox, like, but it does mean that I can't do everything that I'd like to do. Oh my God, this is bird and vegetarian YouTube now. That's what we're doing. Let's see here. Yeah. On the surface, this doesn't necessarily show evidence of political bias since different groups have different behaviors and thus different outcomes. But given the left's documented abuse anti-white of Twitter's policies through doxing and calls to violence and racism, that is not a sentence. That is words that are just put next to each other and they hate each other. Okay, we're gonna move past it. Abuse anti-white of Twitter's policies through doxing and calls to violence. It's fair to question the disparate treatment. Oh, calls to violence and racism. Yes, the left. Infamous calls to racism from the far left. Yeah. Citation needed on this. The consequences of legitimizing left-wing extremism don't stay within the realm of academe, corporations, or big tech. It spells out onto the street through what Antifa does best. Oh boy, everyone get your dog whistles ready. We got 2 sentences coming up here. Violent hooliganism and street thuggery. That type of urban violence is nothing new. But we're beginning to witness a growing tolerance of support of it from factions of mainstream society. Yikes. Oh boy. Urban, by the way, if you didn't grow up in the 90s and early 2000s, urban is a word that usually just means black, but like you don't want to say black because it would be problematic, so you just say urban and everyone knows what you mean. Good job, Andy. You're a racist, Harry. All right. Yep. In 2020, the recurring theme from the left in response to mass BLM and Antifa violence in the streets is people over property. Yes. Indeed, an author, wow. I am a little drunk, I guess. Indeed, an author named, I don't know if she's out, who uses the Twitter name Vicky ACAB, which is a great name, was championed by the mainstream press for her book In Defense of Looting. Okay, that's fair. She's got a book. Vicky Osterweil was championed by the mainstream press for her book In Defense of Looting, published in August 2020. NPR interviewed Osterweil, who argued that looting is moral. Quote, the very basis of property in the U.S. is derived through whiteness and through black oppression, through the history of slavery and settled domination of the country, she said in the interview with reporter Natalie Escobar. Looting strikes at the very heart of property, of whiteness, and of the police. It gets to the very root of the way these things are interconnected. And also, it provides people with an imaginative sense of freedom and pleasure and helps them to imagine a world that could be. This is verbatim what Antifa say when they are asked to justify why they try to burn down businesses and homes. What the journalists, pundits, and intelligentsia don't understand is that as Antifa riots, there really is no line between property destruction and assault. One bleeds into the other as they all serve the same purpose of chaos and violence. Not only do we not have a citation for the bleeds into the other, nothing that came before it even pretends to justify that take. Like, at all. Nothing that preceded it even remotely proves his point, even if it were all true. But we're gonna go back farther, and we're gonna talk about in defense of looting. I'm gonna opine for a moment. I think that sometimes the left does a thing that can be productive, where they're extremely provocative in their titles and their rhetoric. Like, it's on purpose. Like, In Defense of Looting is a provocative title. It's designed to get attention and start a conversation, and that's neat. Very, very cool to do. And the words that Vicky just said, I don't necessarily disagree with all of them, or even most of them. But it's not immediately obvious to somebody reading this quote in Andy Ngo how that's the case. Like, the way that property works in America, the way that it's always worked in America, the way that things have shaken out over the years, the way that systemic discrimination and systemic racism has prevented Black people and other people of color from accumulating property while facilitating the white accumulation of property. Like, all of these things are complicated, way too much for me to get into on a drunken live stream. But you take these quotes, and it does sound outrageous to anyone who doesn't understand the logic behind it. And that's what Andy Ngo is doing here. He's taking things hopefully out of their context and just spilling them onto the page in a way that is designed to shock. And he also is trying to, draw attention to his pet project, obviously, by picking and choosing. But my point is, if that felt shocking to you, I would encourage you to look into it more, because what she's saying is not outrageous in the slightest bit. Yeah, now, Corey, I leave it to you to decide whether a city belongs here. Oh, yeah, no, he's being very silly. He's continuing to argue that he's continuing to cite things that Democrats did pre-1960s as evidence that Democrats are the racist party, and I just don't think that's makes any goddamn sense. So, yeah, no, dude, like, a city, and we know... We know the Democrats were real bad before 1960. They're still pretty bad today, but it's not as bad as the Republicans. If you don't figure out something more interesting to say, we will have to block you. Please, I don't even ask that you agree with me. I just ask that you be funny. That's all I ask. That's it. How did Antifa develop such a close relationship with radical students on American campuses? Thank you for the super chat. I appreciate it. Over and over, we witness students and outside Antifa militant groups working hand in hand to carry out violence, threats, disruption, or harassment against targets and institutions that are supposed to uphold free speech and open inquiry. This close relationship is a unique development of Antifa in the North American context. I just kind of zoned out reading that. It didn't mean, I don't know, nothing that has come before really demonstrates what he just said. He's doing the thing where he jumps around. He's talked a lot about critical theory and how Antifa likes it, and then he's assumed that means there's some kind of secret cabal between students and anti-fascists, instead of them sometimes being the same people and sometimes just having aligning goals, and sometimes anti-fascists will attend events because they platform racists and anti-fascists don't like that, and neither do woke college students, and I don't know, I haven't seen a lot of evidence for a shadowy cabal, but here we are, tragically. Well, we'll carry on anyhow. We're almost done. Although contemporary European Antifa groups grew out of the tradition of radical left-wing student protests in West Germany in the 1960s, what is happening in the United States and Canada more recently demonstrates a unique cross-pollination of several radical ideologies: Marxism, anarchism, and critical theory. Andy, didn't you just say that critical theory was Marxist? Didn't you just spend like a bunch of time establishing that? Like, I mean, I agree with this separation. It's just not consistent. And the golden retriever that edited your book, once again, has failed you. Give him a pat. Fire him. Get a real editor. My DMs are open. Make me problematic, Andy. Hire me. Thank you, Holly, for your super chat. Appreciate you very much. Appreciate everyone who's super chatted very much. Thank you. These donations are all going to Myanmar, so regardless of your reasons for doing it, you've done it for a good cause, and I appreciate you very much. American Antifa has the communist and anarchist origins of European Antifa, but it has evolved to include contemporary social justice politics from critical theory. Intersectionality flows through American Antifa. I think that's true. And I think that's good. Let's continue. The revolution they are fighting for will not be led by workers, but rather trans, black, and indigenous folks with an X of color. We have a citation. Is it going to be a tweet? Oh, no, he's explaining a term. Folks is an alternate spelling of folks used by radical social justice ideologues. Some American Antifa have adopted it into their writings to signal an awareness of intersectional jargon. Those who use folks in their writing say it is more inclusive of people of color and transgender people. A similar spelling and rationale are used for writing Latinx and Wumpksen. The Wumpksen thing, first of all, that's silly. Don't do that. And secondly, it's usually used to signify turfiness, so no, it's not the same. Northern Witch, appreciate the donation very, very much. Thank you so much. I'm very glad that people are donating, and this is great. I think it's very cool. So thank you. I'll let everyone know the totals tomorrow when YouTube figures it out. So we'll continue. We're almost done, actually, which is very exciting for everyone, I think. Yeah, we're almost to the pictures. We have like 2 paragraphs left. We're actually going to almost make the 1 hour mark, which is very neat. Oh, shit! Oh, shit. Oh, you just fucking... Okay, sorry, I got it. Yeah. Holy shit. Owned. Amazing. Holy shit. I'm just going to sit in awe of that. Just beautiful. Good job. All right. Yeah, I also kind of am like, I don't know, I don't really get it. Like, it seems very silly to me. Like, yeah, like, also, I don't know, right, like, trans people are just people, like, they're just human beings, so if a word encompasses all human beings, that seems to include, I mean, I don't know, like, if I'm wrong, DM me, tell me why, but I would personally agree with that. The radical influence travels in both directions. Campus social justice politics are now much more tolerant, if not encouraging, of extremism. Few students who have engaged in the violent shutdown of events or people have ever been held accountable by university administrations. In some cases, like the students who mobbed and harassed a Yale professor over a non-issue Halloween costume controversy in 2015, were actually awarded by the university administrations for enhancing race relations. So there's a citation. I don't need to click on it. I'm pretty sure I know what that is. Somebody dressed up like an indigenous person who wasn't indigenous, and the students didn't like it. And we could talk about whether their means of protesting was productive or not. But we could also talk about how in this, the year of our Lord, well, the time 2015, it's seems like maybe don't do that. Like, there was a time in like the 90s and early 2000s where that was considered fine. But once again, people started to be like, hey, like, maybe we shouldn't, because it sends a message to your brain that, like, I don't know, like, you can't, like, genocide a population and dress up like them. It's ghoulish, you know what I mean? So, like, that would be why. So Andy calling it a non-issue is just, like, his opinion, man, you know? The mutation of Antifa in America didn't end with its embrace of academic critical race theory and campus riots. The rise of Antifa coincides with the rise of BLM. Both movements share an ideology that seeks to upend American liberal democracy and the rule of law. They have important differences from one another, but their mutual hatred of the United States has brought them together to form a powerful, dangerous union. And we're done with the chapter. So next chapter, we'll get to talk about BLM again, which is cool because we already had a chapter talking about it, but now we get another one. Like, Jesus Christ. I don't know why. Why did I start doing this? Why do I hate myself and everyone? Oh my god, have I ever had blue hair? No, I'm a red hair kind of girl. Yeah, this is such a good goddamn point. This is such a good point. Like, stop that. Fucking stop it. Stop it. Trans people are just people. Like, it's not actually hard. It's not difficult. Like, yeah, agreed. Anyway, thank you for putting that. We're going to, real quick before we go, we're going to look at Andy's beautiful pictures. So here's the first one, and I would like to just once again remind everyone that these are the pictures that he chose for this chapter, and once again, the Hachette Golden Retriever that was his editor failed him miserably because it didn't realize that, like, these pictures are not, they don't match the chapter at all, even a little. So this is a picture of a really big anti-fascist protest in Portland. So that is a good, I mean, he says it's by him. Maybe that's true. Maybe that is really his picture. I doubt it. It seems cool. Looks like a good picture, Andy. Thanks for sharing it. And then we have one other picture, which is Antifa Mutual Aid Group set up their base of operations in Chapman Square and Lonesdale Square in downtown Portland. And then he has a picture that is of a cluttered and yet more organized than you'd think tent city of free shit that they were giving out to anyone who needed it. So, yeah, scandalous, Andy. You sure owned the libs on that one. Oh boy. Oh boy. Not his picture? Not surprised. Not surprised at all. Just treat people like people. Yep. Well, this has been another horrible, sad reading of Andy Ngo's horrible, sad book. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. We'll do it again next Tuesday at 6 o'clock PST. We'll probably have a guest at that point. I didn't want to have one today just because everything's been so weird on Twitter. If you're not on Twitter, good job. Don't go on there. It's hell. Real quick, we're going to read off some Patreon thank yous. Thank you to the people who fuel my degeneracy and make this possible. I couldn't do this grift without you. We have a bunch of new people I'd like to thank first off. A big thank you to Sue Seifert. By the way, if I pronounce your name wrong, let me know on Patreon and I'll fix it. Sue Seifert. Also a big thank you to Mr. Zarak, Jordan Jackson, Lauren Massey, Ben Nothing, Alexander Krigsman, Melissa Murphy, Ginger Nielsen, Paul, James Aitken, Rebecca Spongbird, Ben Bengley, RP, Alex Golaski, John the Penguin, Joey Reinsch, and Raina Terror. Raina Terror, your name is great. I really like it. Like, it's just outstanding. It's like Raina, like the name, and then Terror, all one word. Outstanding name. Thank you also to the patrons who have been here for a while. Thank you to Stephen Swan. Thank you also to Greg Bell, Kenneth Clayton Lewis, Skippy, Dana Sullivan, Tina Kopolowski, Sandra Elliott, Shaved Ice, Michael Mataluni, Brent Schrock, and Ominous Lozenge. Thank you also to Jennifer Johnson Burlis, Zachariah, Brian Tejadine, Gentira Lurt, Clint Alter, Chaz, Clark Andrew Kent, Kristen Bott, Holly Jones, Brian Covey, Alexandria Schneider, Polly, Nathan Zilka, Josh Vader, Sam Madison, Benjamin Tupper, Dome, Caitlin Johnson. Also a big thank you to George Decaux, Treblebox, Andrew Stimson, Tiffany Vu, Marone, James Colton, Elizabeth Brassa, Ray Ribbs, Luz Briante, Amanda, Saren Hale, Marvelicious, Zeke, Heather Carpenter, Karen Necco, and Julian. All of you, I am so grateful to, not only because you sponsor my degenerate, disgusting lifestyle, but because of your support. This is work that I love doing. Like, I'm flippant and silly and funny, but like, I truly love this. Like, it's what I've always wanted, and without you, I couldn't do it, but also, like, your support makes me think that maybe it's worthwhile. So thank you to all of you. A great sign out. As always, remember, Andy Ngo is a danger to humanity and himself. Andy Ngo is bad for the community and gives kill lists to Adamov, and thank you very much. Thank you for the late breaking super chat, Brandon. Appreciate you. And all of this will go to Myanmar. Stay tuned on Twitter for how much that was. Good night. Good luck. I love all of you.